Alright guys, the FX DRS Pro match grade trigger. We got some questions recently how to set one up, and therefore this masterclass for you. Before we dive in and adjusting all the screws and showing you how to set up the match grade trigger on the FX DRS Pro, I will show you a cross section with all the different components. Alright, here we have a cross section of the match grade trigger for the FX DRS Pro. You have the casing right here, which houses all the components for the trigger. We have this wedge or this inner blade right there. That blade basically enhances every movement that comes from the trigger bar right here, and therefore translates this into the block itself. Then you have the trigger bar with your trigger shoe. The trigger shoe is adjustable forward and backwards. We have the screw here right at the front. That screw here that actually determines the complete travel of your trigger blade. We have the first screw right here. That is your first stage. There is one which is hidden underneath right there, which is your second stage. And the last one right there, that is your safety. Right, and here we have my personal FX DRS Pro with a match grade trigger on it. And what you want to achieve is basically a very nice, clean and predictable trigger. So you have your first stage travel, very predictable and returns every time. Coming to a firm backstop and with minimal amount of pressure and zero creep. That trigger, let's go. That is what you want to achieve by setting up the FX DRS match grade trigger. You might see some of these pieces of tape. This is shimming tape. It's always good practice to make sure that there is zero movement between your block and your chassis. No two blocks and no two chassis are the same, and therefore the FX DRS Pro comes supplied with some brass shimmings in order to do that yourself. Basically exactly the same like you would do with a firearm to maximize your accuracy out of your system. Let's take that match grade trigger block off and show you the insides and how to set it up. In order to do that, we have to release two screws. That's one right here and one right here on that side, which is a 2mm Allen key. Simply undo those two little screws like so, and then you can lift off the entire assembly. When you take a closer look at the rifle itself, normally you find there that trigger bar with the Pac-Man on the inside, which therefore releases your trigger. But without any trigger or anything on it, this has quite some force needed, and therefore we have the match grade trigger on top of it in order to get that clean, crisp match grade trigger. The trigger unit looks like this. Let's quickly disassemble it by removing the pin right here, and that is easily done by taking a small Allen key and pushing that front pin out. Make sure you don't lose that pin, it's kind of small. And then you can lift off on this piece, and we are left with this. On the inside, you see that wedge. That wedge right there has one adjustment screw right here. This wedge basically enhances every movement you do with the trigger, and therefore gives you that light, crisp, match grade trigger feel. The set screw right there is set up from the factory, so you don't have to mess around with it. But let's say you have done it, or it came out of alignment for some reason, I will quickly show you how to set it up as well. So let's put that quickly back together. All right, with that done, let's put those pieces to the side for a second. Make sure your rifle is on fire. Cock it. Take something to push down on it. And what you want to achieve is that basically the trigger lets go before that lever touches right the bottom there. So on mine, probably it will be exactly where I want it to be. So if you push down on it, let me give you a better angle. So you want to push down on it, and right before it reaches the bottom, the trigger lets go. If for some reason this became out of alignment, you take a 1.5mm Allen key, I will go a full turn outwards, just like this. And as you can see, my rifle is cocked now. And when I press down on this lever, all the way to the bottom, it doesn't do anything anymore. That means that this little screw is not engaging with the trigger underneath. So what you want to do is press all the way down, take it 1.5 millimeter, adjust it clockwise inwards, and at a certain point you will see that the trigger will let go. So I'll keep my finger on it. There it is. And at that point we'll give it a quarter of a turn extra. And this is basically a set and forget. As I mentioned before, this comes preset from the factory, so you normally don't have to do anything with it. Pressing now all the way down, right before it touches the bottom, the trigger lets go. Let's forget about this piece for a second now and focus our attention to this. As you can see, or as I showed before, you have a few little screws right there. The screw all the way in the front towards your muzzle. This one is actually what controls the full length of travel of your trigger. Then the first screw right there, which is your first stage screw. Your second stage, which is now hidden underneath the trigger shoe itself or the trigger. And then at the back right here, this is your safety screw. You can slide the trigger back and forward or the trigger shoe by undoing that little grub screw right there. Use a good set of Allen keys so you don't strip that one. And right now we can slide it back, forward, put it in any position which is most comfortable to you. Sliding it now all the way back gives me access to that second screw right there, which is your second stage. And those two screws, they work hand in hand. They have to balance right on that enhancement bar, and they both work together hand in hand in order to get that crisp feeling. So now that we know that this one is set exactly perfect, we don't have to think anymore about it. It's a set and forget and hidden underneath this part right here. So let's install this one back so we can set it all up. That little pin goes through the front hole right there, which has to align with the hole right there. Put that on. Align those two holes. Push that pin through all the way so it's back like it should be. All right, at the moment I completely backed out all of the screws, the full motion travel screw. Therefore, the first stage, second stage, and the safety is not important for now, unless your rifle is on safe, but make sure it is on fire. Otherwise, the safety might not let you engage the trigger. What you want to do is now first set your second stage trigger, because rifle is cocked at the moment, and as you can see, pushing that trigger is not doing anything. So by holding the cocking lever, taking that 1.5 millimeter screw, Allen, putting it into that last hole, which is your second stage, you want to start turning it clockwise while you press on the trigger right there. And right there, at that point, the trigger is engaging, but as you can see, we have quite a lot of travel right there, which you don't want. You want a nice, clean, crisp break. Therefore, we'll start adjusting the first stage screw, second hole right there. Let's go a full turn and see what that does. Coming close, you can see what you're aiming for is that trigger bar being nice and horizontal with that casing right before the trigger breaks. As you can see, there's almost no creep, maybe ever so slight little bit. So let's give that first stage screw maybe a little bit more. Nice and horizontal. Let's give it a little bit more. And that's all creep eliminated. Now, the travel, from my personal liking, that is way too much. I like a nice short first stage travel, so therefore we have to adjust the screw all the way at the front. That is personal preference, of course. What you can also look at is that this is your starting point. When you cock the trigger, it always comes a little bit more forward, so you can also look at it as your starting point of your trigger shoe. As you can see, we're coming quite close for this bar being horizontal with the casing, and I like mine right before it breaks to be horizontal with that casing. I have a nice short first stage with zero creep and a nice clean break. At this point, you're actually ready setting up your trigger, and what you always can do is put your trigger shoe back on, slide back on to the position where you prefer. For me, that is right above the second stage adjustment screw. Tighten it down so it doesn't move on you. And of course, by having the trigger shoe on it, it gives you an extra lever. So with minimal effort, that trigger has a clean, nice, crisp break. And there you have it. That's how to set your FXDRS match grade trigger. Now, one last thing you need to make sure is that your safety is still engaging after playing around with your trigger. So let's make sure your arm is in the safe position. Cock your rifle. And as you can see, this one is not doing anything anymore. Flipping it back to fire. Everything good to go. Safety first. There you have it. Nice detailed step-by-step instruction on how to set up your match grade trigger on your FX DRS Pro. Few things to note is that the wedge, which is hidden underneath, is set from the factory and is actually not to be touched because it's set to its optimal position. But if you, for some reason, need to adjust it, I've shown you in the video how to do that. Right at the front, this is the screw for the adjustment of the full range of motion. The first screw you encounter is your first stage, second stage, and then all the way at the back, you have the safety screw. I hope this video was useful for a lot of you. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section down below and I'll make sure to answer all of them. I hope you enjoyed it and I'll see you back in the next one. Bye.